Blog Talk Radio. Welcome to MindShifters Radio with your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife Jeanie. Michael and Jeanie share with you the wisdom of the ancient Aramaic internal process of forgiveness. They offer tools and support 5 days a week from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They will support you in building a solid foundation within yourself to live in pure love. In Aramaic, Rakhma. Michael is the author of Why Is This Happening to Me Again? For more information on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. And now your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce. And the truth that is rooted within me.
Hi, and welcome to MindShifters Radio. Our calling number is 646-200-4169. And I'm sitting in a Panera Bread here in Kingsport, Tennessee, so I'm not going to do a whole lot of talking because there's background music going on. But welcome, Michael.
Hey, sweetie. Well, actually, if you have anything to pop in, we can't hear a sound of the background music. And, of course, I know there are people around you, so it's comfortable to do that. Also, have I ever told you your voice on the radio sounds awesome? You really come across nicely. So nice to have you as my co-host. Thank you. So do we have anyone on the line with any questions or anything happening in the chat room with a question about what we've been talking about in the last day or two?
No, David's on the line with us. Tim is not out there yet. And we have a few people in the chat room, but they're all just listening.
Cool. Hey, David, how are you this afternoon? Well, can't hear you, David, so we'll move forward. And our conversation yesterday included a couple of calls, and we started out, actually, by talking about the Aramaic Beatitudes. And for those who may not know anything about the Aramaic language or why I bring the Aramaic into our conversations, the Aramaic language is the root language of at least 5 of the world's major religions. And I would offer, not because it is a religious language, but because it's a language about physics, it's a language about physiology, it's a language about genetics, and it describes precisely and specific how the world works and our part in it in such uncanny and unbelievable ways, especially in the light of the latest in quantum physics. It's amazing. In fact, we provided a quote from a fellow just a couple of days ago who's a physicist and has made huge contributions to neuropsychology, involved in the Manhattan Project, David Bohm. And I was listening to an interview of his this morning, and he's talking about how matter is an appearance, specifically using those words. And then he said, and then as we started to study, we came down to, and we understood it was appearance because all of a sudden we could see these particles, and that what we called matter was mostly space. And so we had these particles called atoms. Now we know what the world is made up of, atoms. And then he said, well, actually, as we studied a little further, and he's quoting a fellow named Niels Bohr, who's a Nobel Prize-winning physicist. And he says, and then we discovered that the atoms were mostly space and weren't really what they appeared to be. And so they were an appearance. And, you know, we can go full circle 2,000 years ago, and you hear this physicist 2,000 years ago saying, don't judge by appearances. Because matter can take on all kinds of appearances that are only true about what's happening in your head. And the world can take on all kinds of crazy shapes and dimensions. And all of the crazy shapes and dimensions that we say causes pain and that's why I'm upset, that's why I'm traumatized, are all about what's going on in our own heads. And the man named Yeshua 2,000 years ago understood that perfectly when he said, you must forgive from your heart the wrongs of your brother. And when that was translated into Greek, it was kind of made to sound like a bleeding heart statement. I forgive from my heart. But we couldn't translate the word heart up until just a few decades ago in the West. So for almost 2,000 years, we've labored thinking that was a bleeding heart statement. And now, since the unconscious or the dissociated mind has been rediscovered, we now know that what he was saying is you have to remove from your dissociated mind, from your unconscious, that which you're building your brain's image of your brother out of, that which you're creating an appearance you call somebody else that is the cause of your pain. And until you recognize and can start to change that, then the appearances keep showing up again and again. Well, actually, there's a book about that. It's called Why Is This Happening to Me Again? Oh my goodness, I know that book. I wrote it. And if you'd like to read the book, you're certainly welcome to. Of course, part of how we support our work is by our product sales. So we'd love you if you go to the website and order a copy. You can do it on a paperback copy, quality paperback, or you can do it on CD. The CD is a newer edit of the book. And you can also, you're certainly most welcome to go to the website and download the book free, www.whyagain.com. And when you go to www.whyagain.com, on the right-hand side, you'll see a link that says, load the book, download the book. And you can also go to a link on the right-hand side of the page, which says download worksheets. And the download worksheet section, the first three links, there are many, many links there, but the first three are about how you forgive. It's an explanation of the process. There's the actual worksheet that comes out of the Aramaic. And then there is a link to an MP3 that you can download free of us walking a young lady named Pamela through the worksheet process, how to forgive. But forgiveness, as opposed to letting other people off the hook for what's going on inside of us, is how we change what's going on inside of us. And I think today is day 34, Jeanie. I'm not sure. I've lost track of our celebration of Memorial Day. Do you have a calendar there that you might have it marked?
I'm bringing it up in just a minute.
Cool. Thank you. So Memorial Day, of course, was 33 or 34 days ago. And on that day, as we interviewed a couple of vets, spoke about the process of forgiveness in relationship to war, we decided the way that we could really honor those who've been murdered, who've been forced to murder, who've been maimed, who've been injured, who've been emotionally scarred, who brought those injuries and those scars or didn't bring those lives home to families who were pained and traumatized around all of those events. We decided that the way to honor them was for each of us, each day that we carry on this celebration, and we're planning on doing it for the rest of eternity, that each of us would take, even if it's just one little tiny, small issue in our lives, that we're willing to be responsible for and forgive. And as you forgive, you change the content of your mind. And when you change the content of your mind, you create a different appearance, a different world. If you never learn how to go inside yourself and remove that which contributes to the appearance that you call everybody else out there, then you get to live the title of my book. And I, for one, am a vote for you letting go of needing to live the title of my book, because when we do something again and again and again, we're replicating the past. And replicating the past is not life. So what we're doing, working to do is to wake people up to life. What is human life? Well, we have an easy definition. Hold a newborn child, describe its essence, and now you know what life is. That's where we all started. Unfortunately, that's not where most of us end up. Most of us end up at the wrong end of a hostility and fear stick, complaining, whining, violating, attacking, criticizing, being resentful about. We think about what somebody else does. But I have a surprise for you. If you're resentful, I ask you how does resentment look like your life? Now, I know that you've got a story. It's because of what Charlie did with the job he was supposed to do over there, and he didn't do it right. No. And if only he'd done it right, then you wouldn't have to be resentful. But notice how resentment looks like your life. Charlie's just an appearance that comes out of those brain cells that hold your resentment. And when you can access and forgive your resentment, guess what? Charlie's going to change. Situations are going to change in your world. Together, if enough of us will take on the task, each day of just removing one resentment. Again, if you don't know how to do it, go to the website. The worksheet's there. Remove one resentment today, one hostility, one fear, even the smallest one. And we are inching toward the successful conclusion of war upon planet Earth. Those who think they need to kill others in order to have what they need and to survive, those who think that they need to make their money from that game, all of a sudden going to wake up and go, oh my goodness, I have a human life. I am love. What am I doing here? And they'll start to change as we change. So that's our invitation to you. If you have any questions or thoughts, we would love for you to call the show. Our number is 646-200-4169. We'd be delighted if you call in. We'd be delighted to share with you all the information that we have, especially about the tool of forgiveness. And, of course, we have a whole compendium of corollary tools, things that assist in learning this process of forgiveness. Jeanie, did you find a number for us? What day is our celebration today?
Day 37.
37? Oh, my goodness, time flies. Okay, so day 37 of the celebration of Memorial Day. And, of course, we just finished celebrating Liberty Day. And you'll notice that the Founding Fathers gave us a Liberty Bell, not a Freedom Bell. We were about understanding that everything we engage in produces a result and that we're willing to receive the effects of the results that we create, good, bad, or indifferent. And as we take responsibility when we're in some sort of pain or turmoil or trauma, we get to change the outcome. Sweetie, do we have any callers? Do we have any?
There's no questions going on. No questions in the chat room or on the phone, but Dr. Tim is with us now.
Oh, welcome, Dr. Tim. How are you, sir?
Very good, thank you.
Awesome. Did you have a great July 4th?
Yeah, very wonderful day on Sunday and Monday. Beautiful weather, and spent the time outside and had a lovely day. I wasn't able to tune in for the show yesterday or Friday. I guess I was busy on both days. So I don't know if you got follow-up from Sam, but I remember last week when we were doing an exercise based on something I brought up, she had a very powerful experience, and so I think about her because I see her on in the chat room. Did you speak with her Friday or yesterday?
No, we didn't. We didn't hear from her Friday or Saturday, so I'm not sure.
Well, then I just want to send out the love and support for Sam and thank her for her comments and support last week when I was working on some stuff. And I'm asking, and you probably mentioned it, but how's Jeanie's foot?
Well, I'm still hobbling around in a cast, and 5 more weeks to go with that one, but it's doing better. I'm at least being able to put some weight on it. And so it's definitely getting better. And Sam says, okay, she'll call in. So I'm just waiting for her to ring in.
Cool. Fabulous. Was it hot where you were over the weekend, Tim?
Yeah, we had a very hot day on Friday. Saturday, Sunday, and Monday were in the high 80s, but very nice.
Cool. We had a couple of hot days down on the river in Jonesville, Virginia. So we went to the family farm and Had an awesome time. There were 91 family members there for a reunion. The family has Jeannie's dad has this just awesome piece of property, and there's about a 20-foot, 5-foot wide river right on what they call river band, and it's kind of cool. There's this huge bluff down the opposite side, so it's totally, completely private, and you can float this river, and you take rafts. It's pretty cold, but you jump in and float for about an hour, a nice, easy, lazy hour going down the river, and you hop out, and of course you'd expect that, well, boy, we got a long walk back, about 3 minutes back because it's a bend and it's U-shaped, and so you get in the river and you come around and this big long float and you come back almost to the same point in the bend in the river, so you have about a 3-minute walk back to the camp. So it's pretty cool. And yesterday afternoon it was getting hot, and all of a sudden we got this little shot of rain. It was just a little one, and the temperature dropped about 20 degrees, and the rest of the day was just awesome. It was beautiful, cool, and
it was really a comical experience. If you could have seen them, I took my cast is a removable one, so I took it off, and they helped me in the water and put me on a float, and I floated around, and then they had to help me back out on the other end, and that was worth a video. But anyway, Sam is now on the line, and then after you get her, we have a comment in the chat room as well. Sam, hi, welcome.
Hi, Sam.
Hello, how are you guys?
We're blessed and highly favored. How about you?
I'm great.
Cool.
So, Dr. Tim I assume you were wondering how I was doing after my little trigger the other day. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, because we did that breathing experience, and you had a flash of shifting and remembering.
That's the beauty of this work. I just glide right through those things that come up when they come up, and I've had 3 different things come up within the last few days. One, when I was driving down to Branson last night, and I was just thinking about something, and it just came up, and I go, wow, and I was breathing while I was driving, and it moved, that energy just moves right out. It's just, to me, the breath work is so powerful, because you don't have to lock it down. You just release it and let it go. I went to have dinner with a friend at a friend's house in Branson last night, and she and I were talking, and she was telling about an experience that she had on an airplane with her disabled brother, having to go to the restroom, and all of a sudden the tears just started flowing, and I said, just bear with me, and she knows how important this healing work is, and I've taught it to her, and we just sat there and breathed together, and it was just her mentioning the experience of her brother having to go to the restroom on the plane, and the light was on, and she couldn't let him get up. The stewardess wouldn't let him get up. Brought up all of the pain that I had stored many years ago after my sister-in-law was murdered. My brother was left with a 35-year-old daughter who had Down syndrome, and she had one leg amputated. And we were in Estes Park with him, and it was shortly after the murder, and my niece had to go to the restroom, and instead of asking me to take her, my brother jumped up to take her to the restroom, and she was in a wheelchair, and when she had to go, and he pushed her back to the restroom, and the restroom was not wheelchair accessible. And he panicked and ran out the door, and I went after him, and he's running down the street, down the sidewalk in Estes Park, California, pushing the wheelchair as fast as he could, trying to find a restroom for her. And I went to get my family, and we went to find him, and we found him in my Suburban with my niece in the back seat, and he's laying down in the front seat handing her paper towels over the seat to help her clean up. And he was letting her have her privacy, but she had had an accident. And I told my friend last night that was probably one of the most moving and horrendous experiences, to see the panic on my brother's face, having to deal with a disabled child, an adult disabled child, and all those feelings when she mentioned her disabled brother having to go to the restroom. And we just sat there and breathed, and she held that space for me, and it just worked on through, and then we went on with our conversation and our evening. So my point with this is when we have these feelings come up, to me it's really an honor to be able to let them go and to have the tools to know that you don't have to live in that pain. It's like, okay, this is something I suppressed years ago, and that was extremely powerful for me because I didn't even know that was in there. And just her mentioning her brother triggered me. And all of a sudden, and I call it my little volcano that erupts in my gut, and all of a sudden it starts coming up, and I just tell whoever I'm with, I said, I need to breathe for a minute, and I know what I'm doing here, and I just let it out. And I just breathe it, and it goes out, and it's all energy, and I released it. So that's the beauty of this work, and that's why it's the most amazing work on the planet. And after I left my friend last night, I drove to Springfield because someone whom I just met called me yesterday and said, I really need to talk to you. And I could tell that it was something that really needed to be taken care of. And so at 9:30 last night, I drove from Branson to Springfield and met this woman, and I'd only seen her twice before, so she's not someone I knew very well. And I went to her apartment, and we talked until 12:30, and I was teaching this work to her and gave her some homework, some mind shifters, some worksheets to do. And I love the willingness of people. And she said, Sam, when I first met you 3 months ago, I knew immediately that you knew what truth was, and I knew that you could help me through. And that's the beauty of this work. And I said, I don't heal anybody. I'm just a conduit to help you get to that space where you can look inside and find out what's going on. And when I work one-on-one with people, I really kind of work on a deeper level and help them understand what their puzzle pieces are. That's what I call the puzzle pieces, based on the story that Michael has in his book about the little girl and the puzzle. And I said, I'm just there to offer this to you. How about looking at this? Could this fit into your puzzle and see how that works? And then she'll just gasp, and she said, I had no idea that's what it was. And I said, well, then you have some work to do around it because now you understand more about it. So she and I breathed a lot to help her through some stuff last night, and it's just this work. It doesn't have to get you down. You don't have to stay stuck in the pain. It's just, recognizing when you've got a trigger, process it, see what it is, and know that it's not happening now, but it's stored energy that you've had in there that's placed a burden on the tissues, and the more you let it go, the better you are.
Well, Sam, it sounds like you're getting to where you're more and more living at what, for my own process in my own life, I've come to call living at process point. And that's the point where that barrier, that veil is pretty thin or pretty much open all the time, and you're just wide open for whatever shows up to trigger. And then instead of playing the resentment and the blame game and, I'm in pain, I'm in upset, but I've got a story about Charlie, and, he's really got a problem, to be able to move into that process space where you just let that stuff move. And, to me, that's one of the goals of the practice of using the tools, is to get to the process point where that veil just opens and things move. And so congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. Well, what I'm doing now is what I learned from Dr. Michael Ryce. And the first time I was at Heartland, I remembered during one of the workshops, someone, and I can't even recall who it was, someone had an immediate trigger, and they started yelling and screaming. And that is what I had seen in the past when someone is trying to heal something. And I recall you getting down on the floor in front of them and saying, this doesn't have to be drama and trauma. It doesn't have to be that way. And that's the first time I had ever heard that. And it enabled me to see that it's just energy, and that's what I learned from you. It's not oh, my God, the world's falling in and all of this. It's just, okay, you've got some stored stuff in there that you need to clear out. Let's find out what it is and let it go because it's holding you back. And that's what I was working with the lady last night. Let's see what's in there because she said she was having a problem moving forward. And I said, let's see what's holding you back. And then she started telling me different relationships that she's had and how she's, always putting herself back. And we identified the power person figure. And so as soon as she knew what that was, she realized, oh, that's what it's about. And I said, see how you've played it out. I directed her to your book, and I said, the title of your book has a reason. It's why are you doing this? Why is this happening to me again? And I said, because we replay until we understand the core issue that we've stored, and we have many, many, many issues that we've stored as a result of our power person. And once she was able to connect that, and I said, and I knew who her power person was, but I said, I'd like for you to tell me who you think your power person is. And she did, and I said, do you see how you've taken on that role through all of these relationships? And I said, it's time to give it up and be the true essence of who you are. And she's going, wow. And it's just wonderful to hand that to someone on a platter and say, this is what's going on in your life. Now you have something to do about it. And she said, I've never known what to do about it. It's always been there, and I didn't know or understand what to do about it. And that's
there are lots of nice conversations.
I'm sorry?
I say there are lots of nice conversations about it, but how-to is definitely the key. And that drama and trauma is such a powerful signal that I'm not willing to let go of this. My identity is built on this one. I love the way the Course in Miracles says it. The Course in Miracles says, problems are meaningless, but don't tell that to somebody in the middle of one. Because, of course, many people's identities are built on the trauma of their problem. And if you threaten to take that away, oh, my goodness, what do I have left if I don't have my drama and trauma? But once you recognize that drama and trauma isn't a very good identity and you decide to let go of it, what shows up is this awesome thing called the human life, and it's made of love, and we get to live there. We get to experience that continuously. And when we're not, oh, okay, here's another piece of work for me to do. And, of course, how much work is there to be done? It's just all the generations, that's all. Back through, clean it out, and move forward. Creatorship's always left.
It's no different than cleaning your house. I have dogs. I have tile floor throughout. I have hair on my floor. I look at the floor and go, oh, it's time to sweep. I mean, it's just logical. I don't get upset and go into drama and trauma because I need to sweep up dog hair. It's just what is. It's just, okay, let's let this move forward. I had a situation that involved my daughter the other day. She called and we were having a conversation because she and I are both dehydrating and we're both eating raw food. And I've been on raw food. I have eaten, it's not 100%, but probably about 90% of my diet for the last month has been raw. And I'm just enjoying dehydrating so much. And she called the other day, and I have a 15-and-a-half-year-old dog that's pretty stressed out, and I've been taking him to the vet, and he's panting all the time, and we're trying to find out what that is, but it's a constant panting. And it can be stressful for me because I've done everything I possibly can. His body is healthy, but he's panting, and we can't find out what it is. And so my daughter and I were talking about that the other day, and I said, all of a sudden I just had overwhelming come up. I said, I'm just feeling overwhelmed with my inability to help him, but he's too healthy to let go yet. And so we were talking with that. All of a sudden the tears just started flowing. And she said, Mom, what's going on? And I said, well, I just have a lot to do. Living alone, the house, sorting out, doing things, enjoying and having fun in my life, keeping up 3 acres, just a lot. And I said, that's just what I'm feeling. I said, I'm just feeling overwhelmed right now. And I just started crying. And she said, I understand. And I just grinned at that because in years past, she would have gotten upset. She would have felt blamed for that. She would have gotten upset and maybe even hung up on me. I don't know. But she would have taken that personally because I felt upset. And the beauty is that she's understanding more about how this works. and she's not taking on someone else's stuff, and she's understanding the difference in codependency and interdependence. And so there was some beauty in that, that she didn't take that on when I was feeling something, because in years past, if I felt something, she would feel totally responsible. So this gift goes on and on and on to those around you. And it's beautiful, and I love it, and I live it.
Absolutely.
And I thank you.
Cool. Fabulous. Tim, anything else to share from? Go ahead, Sam. I thought you were finished.
Oh, yeah, but there's a delay in the phone, so I apologize for that. I'm on a cell phone, so for some reason there's always a delay. So in answer to Dr. Tim, and I appreciate, because I've heard you mention me several times, wonder how I'm doing. I just don't live in that. When I have something come up, it's the process that I just said. It's just, oh, okay, it's up, let me breathe it through. Okay, thank you, it's gone. I don't live in that space. But I appreciate your concern.
Well, it isn't that I'm expecting you to be in drama or trauma, but I was hoping for exactly what we just got, which was another excellent testimonial about how this can work if you stay open and use the tools and acknowledge the fact that the energy is the energy and it's not touching the core of who you are. So thank you.
Exactly.
Wonderful testimonial.
And it's not about victimhood. And we've been taught victimhood our whole lives, and much of the world lives in that victimhood. And if you can just let go of that victimhood and your story, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. When I first went to Heartland and Michael first started talking, one of the things that he said is, "I don't want to hear your story. Your story doesn't matter to me." And I thought, whoa, that's pretty cold. But now I get it. I mean, the story isn't important. It's what you're holding that doesn't belong there. Don't live in that story. Don't live in the drama and the trauma of what all you went through and what all. It just doesn't matter. The beauty is that you came out the other side and you're human now. That's the beauty of it. And I'm through.
Wonderful.
And of
you.
course, the whole game of story is definitely one that a lot of people can get stuck in, and the willingness to forgive as to your story. And forgive has to do with removal. It doesn't have to do with letting people off the hook, of course. And the tools are on the website to go into that Aramaic idea of forgiveness. And if we could just on a daily basis remove one item, one hostility, one fear that doesn't belong in human tissue. And, of course, which ones don't belong in human tissue? All of them. Human tissue is not built for any form of hostility or fear. Human tissue is made for the active presence of love. It's made to embody a human life. And, of course, we come into the world, and the world starts to put its thumbprints on us, and a lot of people get stuck in their story rather than forgiving their story. So you don't forgive yourself, you don't forgive somebody else, you can forgive your hostility, you forgive your fear, and again, it's not about letting it off the hook, it's removal process, it's how to take it out of the structure and get past the appearances created by your mind and be about creating something more in harmony with the true human life, which ties right into the next beatitude. We covered the first beatitude in yesterday's show. We didn't get beyond it after the questions, but we talked about the first word in each of the beatitudes. In Aramaic is tubehun, and it speaks of a latent neural structure. That means an unconscious neural structure implanted by the Creator to guide us to happiness and well-being, and how to make that our conscious possession. So each step in the Beatitudes is how to activate an underlying, what in Aramaic was called tube, an attitude of mind. Tuvehun, the word that's been translated as blessed are they, speaks of this attitude of mind or neural structure, a latent neural structure implanted by the Creator to guide you to happiness and well-being, becomes your conscious possession. And the first one we covered yesterday was those whose home is in the eternal forces from the Creator. And the second one is an interesting one. There was a group of people who were professional mourners. They were called the Abili. And the Abili they'd actually hire these people to go to a funeral and mourn for them. And the Abili were known for always searching their minds and their culture for truth and having a willingness to look into our own errors in thought, and not only our errors in thought, but the errors of our society. How can you tell if you've got an error in thought going on? Have you got some form of hostility or fear in your life? Then you've got an error in thought going on. And in order to change that, as we read from David Bohm, the physicist, neuroscientist, the other day, was that thought says, I will apply thought to this problem and fix it, but there's an inherent flaw in the thought system, and so we simply exacerbate the problem. Because it's not really thought that's happening, it's just rote memory. It's just what's stored in brain cells. And so one of the keys is you got to be out of your mind. You got to get out of the body's mind and the firing of brain cells. If I say don't think about the color of your car, and you say you're thinking about the color of your car now because I said that, you're not thinking at all. Pardon me, all that's happening is brain cells are resonating. So what this beatitude speaks of is that neural structure becoming activated by our love of truth and being able to look into our errors in thought. David Bohm's whole thing was error in thought. That's where the problem lies. And so to be able to look into not only our own errors, but the errors of our society. And what Yeshua said 2,000 years ago, now we're told by the Greeks that was said that you who mourn your wrongs, and then you're going to get comforted. I haven't known many people who sat around mourning all day about their wrongs who got much comfort out of it. But in Aramaic, it's saying if you love truth and you profess your errors, you look into your errors, you look into the errors of your society, what it says will happen is there will be a removal of energies that don't belong. That's called forgiveness. And what it says, the conclusion says, is you will be cured of mental stress. You'll remove what never belonged in your structure. But as long as you cling to, oh no, they're the problem in my life. Look what they did. If only Charlie hadn't done this, I would have this resentment. Or if only Charlie had done that. Now, Charlie only did half of what he should have done. Therefore, if he'd have only done the rest, then I'd be happy. I wouldn't have to be in resentment. And, Charlie's got nothing to do with our resentment, nothing to do with our anger, our sadness, our grief, our rage, our fear. But if I have some sort of turmoil or upset in me, and I start having a conversation about Charlie, I'm in blockage of truth. This beatitude says you've got to love truth enough to see your own errors and the errors of your society. And when you do, you'll remove the stresses in the cell induced by those errors and thoughts. You'll be freed of mental stress. So that's our second beatitude. You love truth. Yes, sweetie.
Okay, there's a conversation in the chat room. There's a person that says they had an odd experience last night. I put 3 things in the building where I live, where I live in close to a recycle area, but visible enough for someone to take them if they wanted. Suddenly another neighbor comes and says, "Put those things in the trash. This is not a flea market." I said, "Okay," and looked in her eyes, and I saw pure pain. And I took the stuff slowly to the trash area and simply felt somehow she was not in a good place. What was all of that about? I simply said, "Okay," and said I thought maybe someone could use the stuff. She was livid and so angry. I felt in a daze afterward and weak, but at no time did I give her back the energy that she threw at me. So what is this about?
Well, it sounds like your opportunity in a place where perhaps otherwise you might have felt criticized, it sounds like your opportunity to claim your human life, whatever's going on for someone else. And when you do that, there's this amazing intuitive faculty that opens up when you have a human life, and you know what's going on in that space across the eyeballs from you. You know what's going on in there. And I think it was Emerson that said that if we could but see, Longfellow said, if we could but see the secret pain of the one, the average person calls the enemy, we would see enough pain and sorrow to disarm all hostility. So it sounds like, maybe that sounds like maybe a marker for you that you've come to a new level where maybe previously there'd been a kind of a hostile response. Who do you think you are, type of thing, that you might have crossed the threshold in forgiving some of that hostility. That's what we're here to invite people to do with this celebration of Memorial Day, to end war. So you just put an end to a little piece of war on the planet, I would say. Awesome work. And to hold a space of compassion and love for this person who has anger over something that sounds like it's really none of her concern. But, we lash out. What tends to happen is events show up, and then those who are in blockage of truth talk about everybody else involved in the event but themselves. They don't say, here I am feeling this, here I am, this is mine, here I am, this is, look what's going on in me. They go into, and look what they did, and look what they didn't do, and if only they had, then I could be happy. And it's just, it's just a fraud to tell that story. So it sounds like you're right on track. It sounds like an awesome piece of work, and what a gift to give. And you never know how many lives you just impacted by that little shift. Instead of falling into the trap and, sending hostility back for hostility and generating more of that in the world, to just be that space. Sounds fabulous. Nice work. I congratulate you and acknowledge you. And you have no idea how many people that will potentially touch that little act of kindness. There's a bumper sticker around that says, do senseless acts of beauty. It's like, there's no senseless act of beauty. Every act of beauty, whatever the situation is the most sensible human thing we can do. There are no senseless acts of beauty. So it sounds like you did one of those sensible acts of beauty. You just held the space instead of falling into resonance with something lower. And most people are simply run by this law of resonance. Something happens, it fires brain cells in me, and I go off trapping off my mouth on whatever that's about, instead of stopping, breathing, and, I could be the space of love here. Sounds like another corner of the world where the healing of war is taking place. Awesome work. Thank you. Any other thoughts there, Jeanie? Any callers? Our phone number is 636-200-4169. We would love to hear from you.
646.
Pardon me, 646. Yes. I've only said it 1,000 times. Thank you. 646-200-4169. Call us. Ask a question about what are you talking about, you guys? Come on. If we have no questions or conversation, let's go on to the next beatitude. I take it by the silence. There are no questions in the chat room.
Nope. Go for it.
Cool. So the next beatitude historically is interpreted as, blessed are the meek, they shall inherit the earth. Well, it's interesting in Aramaic, the second half of that one is not a passive you're going to inherit. It actually speaks of gaining. It's a more active state. And what it says is, you who have humility, not meek. If you look at this guy named Yeshua, I think you could say he was anything but meek. He would get into anybody's face that needed gotten into. If they needed to be confronted, he was there as a space and, laid out the truth. So this humility isn't about groveling in the earth and pretending to be less than anybody else. Actually, in the Aramaic language, the word humility is a mental quality of perceiving and cooperating with the good desires of others. So this beatitude speaks of being able to look, and it sounds like with our last comment there in the chat room, this woman who I believe it was a woman, or it sounded like, that she had humility for this person and could see her highest and best, and at that moment, the only place this woman could come from, or this other person could come from, was a space of hostility. And instead of locking in on that and getting lost in that, you went to another level and went, Highest and best. Let's see. Gee, it looks like she's got a lot of pain. Let me hold the space for her. That's true humility. It's not the, well, you lower being, you did it, but it's okay. I'll just, sort of grovel with you and let you off the hook. You describe perfectly what humility is in your response to that person who didn't want you leaving your recycle items out where somebody else might be able to make use of them. So that's the third beatitude. And what it says is, if you do this, you will gain the earth. Now, there's an energetic reason. There's a physics reason for this. You remember the law of sowing and reaping? Well, this beatitude kind of gives you a reverse look at the law of sowing and reaping. If we go to the opening words in the book of John in Aramaic, it does not say, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh. What it says is, in the beginning was the mind energy, and the mind energy became flesh. And so my mind energy becomes my flesh, your mind energy becomes your flesh. If I'm looking out through eyes other than humility, if I'm looking for the lowest and worst in everything and everybody that I see, on a mind energy level, I am reaping from the world the energy of their lowest and best. Where am I sowing it? Well, Bruce Lipton, cell biologist, informs us that when we think a thought, that thought produces a molecule called a neuropeptide inside of us, and the neuropeptide circulates until it finds a cell, lands on the cell, and replicates within the cell. So you get to live with the chemistry of your thoughts. Literally, if you're always looking at and hypercritic of everything, hyper what's wrong out there, and having your conversations about how everybody else doesn't do it your way, therefore they must be wrong, then by playing that game, you're continuously sowing disintegrative chemistry into the cell. And the person who can have the humility of looking for the highest and best in another rather than locking in on the lowest and worst, because, of course, we've all got our lowest and worst and our highest and best. But if everybody that I look at, I look for the highest and best and base my thinking on that, my chemistry is upgraded. That which shows up in the cell is upgraded into higher and higher levels. If I'm looking for the lowest and worst, my chemistry is degrading. Who's going to be left? Obviously, it's going to be the people with the healthier chemistry rather than the lower chemistry. So this beatitude says, you who have humility, the mental quality of perceiving and cooperating with the good desires of others, you shall gain the earth. Again, your perfect demonstration of humility. This person had their upset and what have you, and they wanted the place to look good. You went to, okay, I can join you in that and bypass all the lower stuff. We get to participate in a lot higher energy level when we're willing to do that. So that's the next beatitude on humility. If we have no other question or thought, Jeanie, I'm going to carry on with the next beatitude.
Well, Sam made a comment. She said she explains to people that triggers are much like a light switch. When we're triggered, the light, and she's got that in quotes, comes on from what we have stored within us. If the wiring isn't in the wall or the ceiling, then the light can't come on, and that our minds work the same way. The wiring is there, or we wouldn't have the trigger. This person was upset, obviously, was triggered, and had the wiring in there for someone putting stuff outside the trash, and said that it wasn't a flea market. Just realized that she was the one with the trigger.
Cool. Yes, yeah. You can't, if you put a middle C tuning fork in front of another middle C tuning fork, it resonates, it fires, that's all. If you put a middle C tuning fork in front of a middle A tuning fork, the second tuning fork does nothing. If you don't have hostility to be resonated by someone else, you can then have humility, because hostility dumbs us down and takes us into the energy pattern set by the other. If we rise above it, then being in humility, you get to be in a whole different vibration, literally a whole different energetic vibration. I was talking about the Aramaic and how it was a physics language, and, Bohm talking about this atomic structure being an appearance. Yeshua says, don't judge by appearances. If we keep looking at what our mind generates as pictures, then we're going to outpicture whatever is inside of us. And if we're upset about it, there's our next piece of forgiveness work. Instead of blaming it on somebody else, to stop and go, how could I have humility for myself right here, right now? Well, I've got fear going on. Okay. Well, then my highest and best would be to go to work, forgive my fear, come to the next level. And then I get to a new level of empowerment and vitality. The goal of the ancient Aramaic teachings was to take us to 100% vitality and empowerment, 24/7, 365. That's what our goal is with each of you. If you have a question about how to do that, or, sometimes this conversation can sound insane. People, wandering around in darkness, bumping into each other, the rages, the fears, the griefs, the pains, the wars, the insanity that goes on in our culture. This sounds like the insane conversation. But I'll tell you what, folks. You started out with a human life. Go hold a newborn. That's exactly how you started out. You deserve to have, it's your birthright to have, and to live out of a human life, out of this absolute awesome presence of love. We only degrade because we bought into something that didn't belong, that somebody else was putting out there. In the case where this young person just shared with us about the recycle stuff, the person who confronted her put out anger. Instead of joining with the anger and getting lost in the anger, she rose above it, held a different space. Awesome. Awesome piece of work.
Okay, a couple comments, Michael, in the chat room. One is that the person who was telling about, putting the trash out and the neighbor going crazy or whatever, Sam had said, well, you were able to maintain love, and they said yes, that they felt that was the secret. And they felt like the anger is an addiction, and it is. And then he went on to say that they do tuning fork healing. I want to know what's wrong with people who don't like tuning forks or who hate tuning forks. What's wrong with them?
Jeanie?
Yes.
What kind of work?
Tuning forks. They do healing with tuning forks.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
And what's wrong with people who hate tuning forks? But then Lisa also says she doesn't have time for the conversation about it because we're short on time on the radio show, but hold the space for her. She did finally get to see her children for 2 hours, and the court still hasn't made a decision on it. Yeah.
We hold the space for you, Lisa, that opening grows and grows and grows until there's sanity abounding. And there's a situation where several weeks ago, for those who maybe weren't part of the show, Lisa is someone who had been in Heartland for a year and working with the tools, and had a husband that was had kind of wiggled control of the children from her, and brought her before a judge to try to have her totally cut off from her children. And Lisa, I really acknowledge your courage for standing up in the courtroom and picking a copy of the commitment and speaking it to the man who, it's been pretty brutal. I've gotten to witness some of the brutality, verbal, emotional brutality from a distance, of course, but I've gotten to witness some of it and hear it. And the courage to stand in that courtroom and speak that commitment, that's pretty awesome. And it moved you a whole notch higher in your process, so cool. We hold the space. So the next beatitude is we're told in the classic or historical interpretations, those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. And we'll hear people talk about their righteous anger. Excuse me, there is no right use of anger. No such thing exists. One who thinks they are righteously using anger just gave up their relationship with love and broke the first law. Excuse me, all the rationalizations in the world to try to make your anger righteous doesn't make it righteous at all. What it does is it destroys your tissue structure. The chemistry associated with anger in the human cell destroys the cell. There is no right use of anger. So it isn't about righteousness in that sense. But in the Aramaic, here's what it speaks about. It says, you who hunger for the mind structure underlying the attitude, judgment, and behavior described as just and fair behavior between people. So what was said 2,000 years ago in the Aramaic, as opposed to have righteous stuff going on, was that you want to have a desire for, that you want to move in the direction of a mind structure that underlies the attitude, judgment, behavior that would be described as just and fair behavior between people. And there's kind of a cute story about the man who approaches the master who's standing in the middle of the river, and he says, Master, how do I find God? And the master grabs him by the scruff of the neck and stuffs him under the water and holds him there a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. The guy's like, the final jolts of life moving out of his body, and he pulls him up out of the water. And the guy's gasping for it. He says, why did you do that? He says, you got to want relationship with love, with God, as much as you wanted that next breath of air. Now, we live in a culture that's told us to want vengeance. Vengeance is good stuff to have, to want your way, to want control, to want all kinds of stuff. What this one speaks about is that you desire this mind structure that underlies the attitude, judgment, and behavior. In other words, you're correcting your mind's malfunctions here. And that mind structure that it's suggesting that you have is one that underlies just and fair behavior between people. And what it says is, if you do that, you will attain it. The Greek translation is, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, they shall be filled. In Aramaic, it's those who hunger for the mind structure underlying the attitude, judgment, and behavior described as just or fair behavior between people. Remember, we read Boehm's quote the other day. He speaks about this space of sustained incoherence. Hostility and fear are sustained incoherence. Unfairness is sustained incoherence. And this mind structure that Yeshua is speaking about will correct that sustained incoherence that Boehm referred to as the whole root of the problem of our human society. Jeanie, any questions or conversation in the chat room to be aware of before we go on to the next beatitude?
No, there's nothing else right now, and we are down to 2 minutes, though.
We are. Time flies when you're having fun. Well, instead of going into the next beatitude, we'll hold that one for tomorrow. What I'm going to invite everybody to do is jump on www.whyagain.com. If you're ready to take your work to the next level, in about 2 weeks, on July the 18th, we will begin a 9-day Why Is This Happening to Me Again intensive at Heartland. We'll be doing process-oriented workshops. We'll start out in that 9 days. We'll do Why Is This Happening to Me Again, healing to relationships, communication. Did you hear what I think I said? Purpose, personal power, and commitment, and power. MindShifters, hands-on energy field work, still point breathing. And there's a whole series of things to follow that. Jump on the website under schedule and think about coming to join us and taking your process to the next level. Of course, our intensives, there is a cost involved, and you can look at that schedule on the website and the prices. We're also open to doing work support programs for people who are not in a position to handle it financially, and we'd be delighted to have you at Heartland this summer. We hope your day is blessed, and we hold that our work will support you in creating the best year yet of your eternal life, and we hold you in that space of love. Blessings.
Thank you for listening to MindShifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife, Jeanie, who present the internal Aramaic process of forgiveness. Michael and Jeanie are here every Monday through Friday from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Earth Angels Radio. For more on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. That's www.whyagain.com.